Okay, so you want to own a food truck. 24 feet of stainless steel with your name down the side. A flat top, a fryer, a prep line, and a window. You park somewhere with a lot of people, you open at 11, and by 2 o'clock, you've served 300 lunches and you're driving home. No landlord, no dining room, no hostess stand, no lease. That's the picture. And the appealing part is that the barrier really is lower. A restaurant in the same city costs 5 to 10 times as much to open. Nobody is asking you for a personal guarantee on a 10-year lease. If a neighborhood stops working, you drive somewhere else. So here's the problem. Stand across the street at 12:30 and watch one. The line is 14 people deep. The window is open. 2 people inside are moving as fast as human beings move. And the customer at the back of that line is looking at their phone, doing arithmetic about how long they have, and then leaving. You did everything right. You picked a good spot, the food is good, the line proves it. And you are still losing money at that exact moment. Because the constraint on this business is not demand, and it is not the food, it's the window. Which means a food truck is not a restaurant that moves. It is a business that sells a fixed quantity of minutes through one opening to a line that will not wait forever. Everything you own, the truck, the fryer, the wrap, the recipes, exists to move human beings past that opening at a certain rate. And the thing that sets that rate is not how hard you work. It's the menu. Hold on to that, because it inverts almost every instinct a restaurant would give you. Let's start with what you're actually buying, because food truck covers about 6 different businesses. At the bottom is the cart, hot dogs, coffee, shaved ice, $10,000 to $30,000, minimal equipment, and a genuinely low risk of ruin. It also has a hard ceiling that no amount of effort moves, and everyone who owns one knows exactly what that ceiling is. Then the towed trailer. Cheaper than a truck because there's no engine and no chassis to maintain, and cheaper to repair for the same reason. The trade-off is that you need a tow vehicle. Setup and breakdown take real time, and you cannot reposition midday. Once you're placed, you're placed. Then the classic lunch route truck. Self-propelled, 20 to 26 feet. Working office parks and business districts Monday through Friday. Predictable, weather exposed, and completely dependent on other people's work schedules, which, as a lot of operators discovered, are not as fixed as they used to be. Then the venue resident. You park at a brewery or a tap room under a standing arrangement, often several nights a week. The venue sells drinks, you sell food, and neither of you needs a kitchen license the other one has. Steady, lower marketing cost, and you are now dependent on somebody else's foot traffic and somebody else's landlord. Then the event and festival truck. Weekend circuits, fairs, markets, races. Enormous single-day revenue, enormous fees, and a schedule set by organizers who can drop you or add 3 competitors without telling you. And then the catering first truck, which looks like all of the above from the outside and is a completely different business underneath. We'll come back to that one because it is where the money in this industry actually is. Each of those answers the same question differently. How do you get in front of enough people, often enough, at a low enough cost? That decision sets your equipment, your hours, your staffing, and your ceiling. Now what it costs to open, and the truck is the obvious number, so let's get it out of the way. A used truck with working equipment commonly runs $60,000 to $80,000. A new custom build with a proper hood, fire suppression, 3-compartment sink, hand sink, water tanks, and the layout you actually want runs well north of $100,000. And $150,000 is not unusual. Then the things that are not the truck. A generator, because you cannot count on shore power. A wrap, which is your only signage and costs real money. A point-of-sale system with a card reader that works without reliable signal. Initial inventory, small wares, a deposit on propane. Health department plan review. Business licenses in every jurisdiction you intend to sell in, which is not one jurisdiction. Call it $140,000 to $160,000 to be legally open with money left to buy food. And then there's the cost that surprises nearly every first-time owner, and it is the one that ends the fantasy about not having a landlord. You need a commissary. In most of the country, you may not legally prepare or store food at home for public sale, and you may not use the truck itself as your base of operations. You need a licensed commercial kitchen for prep, storage, water fill, wastewater disposal, and frequently overnight parking. Health departments require it, and many will not issue your permit without a signed commissary agreement on file. So you rent one? $800 to $1,500 a month is typical, sometimes considerably more in expensive metros. And what you get for it is a shared kitchen you use at inconvenient hours, alongside other operators. Read that again because it reframes the whole business. You did not escape having a fixed facility with rent. You added a mobile one on top of it. You have a landlord and a vehicle payment, and the vehicle is the part that breaks. Which brings us to the second cost nobody budgets. The truck is a commercial vehicle. A restaurant with a failed oven is a restaurant with a problem. A truck with a failed alternator is not a business that day. It has no location, no service, no revenue, and a crew you may still be paying. Transmissions, generators, refrigeration compressors, and water pumps all fail eventually. They fail on the road, and they fail on the day you had a booked event. Budget for it as a line item, not as a surprise, because it is neither rare nor optional. And there's a third cost that is not money at all, which is the paperwork service. A restaurant is licensed once, by one health department, in one city. A truck sells in whatever jurisdictions it can reach, and each of them may want its own business license, its own health permit, its own fire inspection of your suppression system, and its own rules about where and when you may park. Some reciprocate with their neighbors. Many do not. So, the practical shape of it is that expanding your radius does not just cost fuel. It costs a license, a plan review, an inspection appointment, and a renewal date you now have to track forever. Operators who work 3 counties are managing a small compliance calendar, and the penalty for getting it wrong is not a fine. It is being shut down at 11:15 with a line already forming. Now location, and here the usual advice is not just wrong, it's the wrong category. Everyone tells you to find foot traffic, but the number of places with a lot of people is very large, and the number of places where you may legally park a commercial kitchen and sell food from it is very small. And those two sets overlap much less than you'd think. The spot you actually need has 4 things at once. People, obviously, legal permission to vend, which means either a public right-of-way permit where those exist, or a private property owner who has agreed. Physical room for a 24-foot vehicle, plus a queue. That doesn't block a sidewalk or a fire lane, and a crowd whose schedule tolerates a line. Strike any one of those and the location is worthless to you, no matter how many people walk past it. And the good spots are controlled by somebody. Private lots want a fee or a percentage. Breweries want an arrangement. Events charge for the pitch and sometimes take a cut of sales. Cities cap permits, restrict blocks, and in many places prohibit vending within a set distance of a restaurant that pays property tax. A rule written by people who are not your customers, and lobbied for by people who are your competition. So your real trade area is not a map of population. It is a much shorter list of places you are allowed to be, and every one of them has an owner with an opinion. There's a second half to the location problem that has no equivalent in a fixed restaurant, and new owners consistently underestimate how much work it is. A restaurant's address is permanent. Somebody who ate there in March can find it in July without being told. You buy the location once, and it keeps announcing itself. A truck's location is unknown until you announce it, and it expires the same day, which means every single service you're doing 2 jobs. You are running a kitchen, and you are running a broadcast, telling several thousand people where a 24-foot vehicle will be standing for 3 hours, early enough that they can plan a lunch break around it, in a channel they actually check. Miss the post, and you have a fully staffed truck with food prepped, parked legally in front of nobody. That is a real operating cost, and it is almost never in anybody's projection. It is a person's time every morning, forever, and it does not compound the way a restaurant's location does. You are renting attention by the day, and the rent is due again tomorrow. It also explains why standing arrangements are worth more than their revenue suggests. A brewery slot every Thursday is not just sales. It is the one part of your calendar your customers can memorize. Now the mechanism. This is the part that decides whether you make money. Take one lunch service. You are open 3 hours, but your revenue does not arrive evenly across 3 hours. It arrives in a spike because your customers all get released from the same offices at roughly the same time. Realistically, you have a peak of about 75 to 90 minutes where the line exists at all. Now measure one transaction. Not the cooking, the whole thing. The customer steps up, reads the menu, decides, orders, pays, and moves aside. Then the food is assembled and handed out. On a well-run truck with a tight menu, a trained crew, and a card reader that works. That cycle runs about 45 seconds per order sustained. On a truck with 12 items, 3 of which require a question, and a customer who has never seen the menu before, it runs 75 seconds or worse. Do the arithmetic on 90 minutes. At 45 seconds, you can serve 120 orders. At 75 seconds, you can serve 72. Same truck, same location, same crowd, same food. 48 orders of difference. And at a $14 average ticket, that is $672 of revenue. That existed, showed up, stood in your line, and left. That is the whole business in one number. And here is the part that inverts the restaurant instinct. In a restaurant, adding a menu item adds revenue because a seated customer has time to consider it, and a bigger menu catches more preferences. On a truck, adding a menu item usually reduces revenue because every additional item adds decision time at the window, and decision time is the expensive part. It adds a prep station, a hold, a possible substitution question. It adds a thing that runs out at 1:15 and generates a conversation. Every one of those costs you seconds, and you only have 5,400 of them, which means your menu is not a marketing document. It is a capacity schedule. The operators who understand this run 5 or 6 items, price them so the average ticket is high enough to matter, and treat any request to expand the menu as a request to reduce revenue. That is the mechanism. You are not selling food. You are selling throughput, and the menu is the throughput. Now the psychology, because it explains why the line has a hard limit. Your customer is not choosing between your truck and a restaurant. They are choosing between your truck and having their lunch break back. They have 30 to 45 minutes, and part of it is already spent walking to you, which means the queue is a price. It is a real cost the customer pays, denominated in minutes, and they are constantly recalculating it. There is a threshold, for most people somewhere around 8 to 12 minutes of visible wait, past which they simply leave, and the industry word for that is balking. And balking is uniquely brutal in this business because the customer you lose is a customer you already paid to attract. You paid for the spot, the fuel, the crew, the wrap, and the social post that told them where you were parked. They arrived, then the line did what lines do, which is why the fastest operators do things that look strange from the outside. Menace posted far up the queue so people decide before they reach the window. Order ahead links, pre-portioned components, a second person taking payment away from the window, and a deliberately visible pace so the line feels shorter than it is. None of that is hospitality. All of it is arithmetic. It also constrains who can work for you, in a way a restaurant does not. You have room for 2 people, 3 if the layout is generous. That is the entire staff. There is no back of house to absorb somebody slow, no station to move a weak cook, 2, and no shift where a new hire can learn quietly. On a truck, one person operating at 75 seconds sets the pace for everybody, because there is only one window and everything funnels through it. Add the working conditions honestly. It is a metal box over a flat top and a fryer in summer, standing, with no bathroom of your own and a commute at both ends of the day. Then add that the shift is genuinely short. You are paying for 3 hours of service and perhaps 6 of total time, which is not enough hours to hold somebody who needs full-time work. The result is that turnover in this business is high, training time is long relative to the shift, and the person who ends up covering every gap is the owner, which matters more than it sounds, and we'll come back to why. There is a structural problem underneath all of this, and it is the thing that decides what you own at the end. You are a tenant of everyone and a landlord of nothing. You rent the commissary. You occupy the brewery lot at the venue's pleasure. You pay a fee for the event pitch. You hold permits issued by cities that can change the rules. And unlike a restaurant, none of your location is yours. You do not build goodwill attached to an address. You cannot assign a lease, and there is no leasehold to sell, which means when you exit this business, you are selling a used commercial vehicle with a kitchen in it, plus whatever your social following and catering client list are worth to somebody. That is a genuinely smaller number than owners expect, and it is the reason so many trucks are listed for sale by people who are doing fine. So how do these actually break? The first way is dependency. A truck that built its whole calendar around one brewery, one office park, or one event circuit is running on somebody else's decision. The brewery signs an exclusive with another operator. The office park's tenants go to 3 days a week. The festival organizer raises the pitch fee and admits 4 more trucks in your category. None of that is a failure of your cooking, and all of it arrives with about 30 days of notice. The second way is quieter and much more common, and it is the one worth understanding properly. The owner is the throughput. For the first 2 years, the founder is on the truck every service. They are fast, they know the regulars, they fix the generator. They run the line at 45 seconds because it is their name on the side. The business works. Then it does well enough to buy a second truck, and the second truck has staff on it, running the same menu at 75 seconds with no owner. Revenue per service falls by a third while every cost doubles. Meanwhile, the founder is now driving between 2 trucks and running neither one properly. So truck 1 slows down too. Nothing broke. They just discovered that the asset producing the return was a person, and there is only one of them. So let's do the math plainly. One truck, working lunch 5 days a week plus some evenings, call it 250 services a year. 90 orders per service at a $14 average ticket. $1,260 a service, about $315,000 a year. Then catering, 20 private events at around $2,200 each, which adds $44,000. Call total revenue $355,000. Now costs. Food and packaging at 30% of revenue is $106,000. Crew wages $75. Commissary rent $14. Fuel, propane and generator $9. Truck maintenance and repair $8. Insurance across the vehicle, general liability and workers' compensation $9. Permits and licenses across multiple jurisdictions $6. Card processing $9.5. Location and event fees $18. Marketing $4. Small wares and supplies $12. That totals about $270,000, which leaves roughly $85,000 of operating profit. And you need to be honest about what that number is. It is not a return on capital. It is mostly your wage for a physically demanding job, with early mornings and late cleaning. Finance $150,000 of build and equipment on a 5 to 7 year term, and debt service runs around $30,000 a year. That leaves about $55,000 of actual cash to you. Now change one variable. Not the location, not the marketing. The menu. Cut from 12 items to 5. Post the menu up the queue. Move payment off the window. Transaction time goes from 75 seconds to 45. Orders per service rise from 90 to 125 on the same crowd. Because those people were already standing there, revenue on the same 250 services goes from $315,000 to $437. Food cost rises with volume. Labor does not, because it is the same crew. Add the same catering, and you are at $481,000 of revenue, against maybe $308 of cost. Operating profit goes from $85,000 to $173. Same truck, same spot, same food, fewer choices. That is why the menu is the most important financial document in this business, and why it belongs to the owner rather than the cook. Which brings us to the second revenue stream. And in this industry, it is not a side business. For a lot of successful trucks, it quietly becomes the main. 1. Catering. Look at what a private event actually removes. There is no weather risk because they book you regardless. There is no location risk because they tell you where to park, and they have already cleared it. There is no demand risk because you are paid for a guaranteed head count. There is no queue problem because you know the number and you can pre-portion for it. And there is no balking because nobody at a wedding leaves to get a sandwich somewhere else. You are selling the same food out of the same window. And you have deleted 4 of the 5 things that make the retail business hard. That is why the margin is better and the stress is lower. And it is why experienced operators treat lunch service partly as paid advertising for the catering calendar. Then the smaller additions, a standing venue arrangement that guarantees a base, branded merchandise, which is low revenue and high margin, sauces or a packaged item sold retail. And in some markets, renting your commissary time to somebody smaller than you. Let's put a full year on the table both ways. The good year. The season runs dry, you hold a standing brewery arrangement 2 nights a week, and you tighten the menu in the spring. Catering grows to 35 events because the lunch line is doing its job as advertising. Revenue reaches $470,000. Costs hold at $310. That is $160,000 of operating profit against 30 of debt service. The bad year. It rains through the spring and you lose 30 lunch services outright. Not deferred, gone, because nobody buys 2 lunches on Thursday to make up for Tuesday. The generator fails twice. Once during a booked event you had to refund. The city revises its vending rules, and your best lot is now off limits. In August, the transmission goes. Revenue falls to $255,000 and costs land at $250. $5,000 for a year of 14-hour days. The gap between those 2 years is $155,000 of income on a business whose entire asset is a vehicle that is worth less every year. And notice which of those 2 years you can actually insure against. You can insure the transmission. You can insure the truck if somebody hits it. And you can carry liability for the obvious reasons. You cannot insure the rain. That is the uncomfortable shape of the risk here. In most of the businesses in this series, a bad quarter is a demand problem you can attack with price or with marketing. In this one, a large share of the variance is a weather pattern that removes services outright, on a schedule nobody controls. And a lost lunch is genuinely lost. It does not come back on Thursday, because nobody eats 2 lunches to make up for it, which is another reason the catering calendar matters more than it looks. A booked private event is the only revenue in this business that arrives whether it rains or not. So if you buy one, understand what you're actually buying. You are not buying a restaurant with the rent removed. You still have rent. It is called a commissary. And it is on top of a vehicle payment. You are not buying freedom from a landlord. You have 5 of them, and none of them owe you a renewal. And you are not buying a food business. You are buying a queue with a kitchen attached, and the kitchen is the easy half. Cooking well is the part most owners already have handled on the day they open. It is not what separates the trucks that last from the ones listed for sale in 18 months. The truck is what people photograph. The window is what you actually own. About 6 square feet of it, and about 90 minutes a day when it matters. Every real decision in this business is a decision about how many human beings you can move past that opening before their lunch break ends. So price the food, however you like. You are selling seconds.